Let's move on to another story that's come in from Canada. Yet another Hindu temple has been desecrated in Canada and Ontario after being spray painted with anti-India graffiti. This happened late Tuesday night. The target of the vandalism was the Bap Sri Swaminarayan Mandir in the town of Windsor. This is in the province of Ontario. Now, as seen in the past, such attacks, whether it is slogans against India, against Prime Minister Modi, this graffiti has been painted on the walls of this temple. The CCTV footage of the desecration that was released by the Windsor police shows two masked men defacing the temple walls. Police are investigating the Hindu temple vandalism as a hate-motivated incident. Despite the government raising these concerns, the required action so far doesn't seem to have been taken by the Canadian government. Now, this is not the first or second. This is the fifth such attack that has taken place in Canada in less than a year. 2 months ago, the target was the Sri Ram Mandir that was in the town of Mississauga in the GTA. Slogans spray-painted include those attacking India, Prime Minister Modi describing the founder of the separatist Khalistan movement, Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala, as a martyr. Prior to that, on the 30th of January, the Gauri Shankar Mandir in Brampton, again in Ontario, was desecrated. And before that, a statue of Mahatma Gandhi at the Vishnu Mandir in Richmond Hill was defaced in July last year. Also in September last year, there was an episode of vandalism that occurred at the front entrance of the Swaminarayan Mandir in Toronto. This is what the spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs had to say.
This is a very unfortunate incident and we condemn it. This issue has been taken up with the Canadian authorities. With the same request that we have made on earlier occasions, please catch the perpetrators, please try to prevent, ensure that this does not happen again. And I hope that Canadian authorities are able to take action on those lines. But certainly, yes, let me reiterate, we condemn it and it has been taken up with the Canadian authorities.
All right, so what should India do? Yes, of course, you can summon the ambassador, you can issue note verbals, but at the end of the day, local law and order is a local subject, and that needs to be amped up by the local authorities, whether in Canada or in Australia or in the UK. Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti is former Secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs. Dean Baxendale is an author and policy analyst joining us from Canada. Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, the last time this happened, I think it was in London. Again, a démarche was issued, the highest ranking official was brought in, same with the Canada attacks. But somehow all of these seem very symbolic, or at least superficial, if you will, not in a way that the local authorities in any of these countries, Australia, Canada, UK, are acting with the full force of the law to try and deter future attacks. So what should be done?
Well, we must understand that countries which host these kind of diaspora use these incidents and other things to leverage their ties with India. That's the realistic part of the bilateral relationship. And because we will go to them to make requests, okay, don't do this, don't do that, so it gives them leverage. Apart from the fact that their domestic constituencies are there, they depend on the votes of some of these people. And so hence, they have to also balance ties with India, with their domestic, vote bank politics, as we say in India. This is the complexity of the situation. India has to slowly, I think, escalate the issue in the sense that we also have leverages, and if Canada needs something from India, then I think we can use that as a leverage. But then it depends on how much leverage you can develop. That's the point that in international politics and ties that one has to calculate.
Okay.
If you have enough leverage with Canada, they will listen to you. They have to.
Okay,
And they will act.
I'll come to what these tools of leverage are in just one second, but I want to bring in Dean Baxendale as well. I think there's also a question of reciprocity, and that's a fundamental sort of tenet of international diplomacy. If the same thing were to happen to an Australian, or a Canadian NGO or a Canadian enterprise or an institution here in India, if somebody went up there and defaced the walls outside or painted anti-Canada graffiti, that I don't think is something that the governments there would take very kindly to. So where is then the question of reciprocity? Because here again, it's not just the fact that this one Hindu temple was attacked. This is the fifth one in the last year. More than that, the kind of graffiti that's been painted there is openly separatist, secessionist of the Indian Union. That's not something that Canada would brook. Let's say tomorrow somebody were to paint graffiti outside the Canadian High Commission saying Quebec should be a separate land. That's not going to be acceptable.
No, nor is it, there have been numerous attacks over the past 2 years, and certainly in the last year, not only against Hindu temples, but obviously, Jewish synagogues, the Muslim, synagogues have been attacked as well. But these direct attacks on Hindu temples do speak potentially of the, potentially connections to the Palestine movement. And quite frankly, as somebody who defends human rights around the world, I find this deplorable. The reaction, though, I will say this. I believe that the RCMP is certainly aware and tracks these types of incidents inside Canada as to what's going on in the bigger picture as to potential terrorist actions inside the country, and certainly isolating Hindus in this particular case. It's not something that, again, our government should respond to this. And obviously, there's local policing, there's provincial policing, and then there's the RCMP. And these jurisdictions right now fall under the local policing. And there needs to be a connection now between these kinds of acts and understanding that they're more than just somebody painting graffiti on a wall.
And why is that understanding not happening? Because that understanding has to come from the top. It has to permeate down to the local police. Yes. And somehow that's just not happening, not just in the case of Canada, perhaps even in the case of Australia or the UK. One part of it, as Ambassador Pinak Chakravarti said, there are domestic compulsions, or there are domestic politics, and there are a lot of Indo-Canadians there, a lot of people from the Sikh community. There were politicians who pander to those baser instincts as well. But, at the end of the day, this is a law and order issue which needs to be dealt with the firm hand of the law. And that somehow is not happening.
Agreed. And I think that, a deeper investigation and resources have to be put to try to put a stop to this, because this kind of religious persecution is not something that should be tolerated in Canada. That's what we have. We brought people to this country to be able to practice their own religious beliefs and be who they want to be. So this is deplorable, and I think the federal government needs to take, as you say, a leadership role in pushing down the information and insights to local police so we can make arrests.
So, Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, you said earlier on that India has leverage or tools of leverage against Canada. One big tool of leverage is trade. All of these countries want to trade with India because India is a huge market. Now, the moment you bring trade in as some kind of a leverage, then it's automatically, but why are you bringing in something that is totally unrelated? Is that something that can be realistically used against these countries to force their local governments and their local administration, local police to take action and be seen to be taking action against these elements and against these incidents? Or should there be something reciprocal here in India? Like, for example, what happened with the UK mission a few weeks ago, where security outside the mission was removed.
There are options available to the Indian government, and it is they who have to decide, going through, through some discussion process of analysis as to what reciprocal measures that we can take. Obviously, we don't normally retaliate in that sense. It is not the Indian way of doing things. But Canada has to realize that, of course, this whole problem of that just writing a graffiti on a wall is freedom of expression. This is what they feel that it is. Then what if it happens in India that there's people go and vandalize or do things on walls of different institutions, etc. We obviously don't encourage that, and we don't allow that to happen. But this is the problem, that that these people have been given a certain amount of rope to do these things, and this obviously irritates the Indian government.
Mm-hmm.
It creates a very bad image for Canada, that this is a country. But then Canada feels that there are that these are immigrants, etc. We are a country which encourages immigrants. India is a major provider of immigrants, etc. That's the other side, flip side of the coin.
Okay.
So they think that's a leverage for them because Indians want to go there, etc. So this is a complex situation. I don't think trade is, you can retaliate just on trade or anything.
Yeah. Correct.
But there are other avenues that we can do. I don't want to spell them out because that is in the realm of government's decision.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what things we can do, and when I was in government, we have done it. So let's wait and see how the government decides or sort of sets out the agenda.
All right, Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, Dean Baxendale, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Let's see how this story plays out between the governments of India and Canada. But like I said, local action needs to be taken and needs to be seen to be taken. Talking about local action, there's some